NetsBoy, so let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy, he thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play.
What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bringing you the latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. All right, let's dive right in. We have a lot to talk about in this episode, a lot to discuss, and a lot to go over. It's been a little over 2 weeks since my last NetsBoy episode, which I did right before the NBA draft. So we have to talk about that and discuss the players that the Nets drafted, and what I think of that. And then we have to talk about, obviously, the beginning of free agency, which has gone off to a very crazy start, in my opinion, and some of the new players the Nets have signed so far, and maybe some other moves that I think they could make moving forward. We've got to discuss and talk about Joe Harris and Patty Mills being pretty much given away for nothing and salary dumps. And then, of course, we really need to talk about all the Damian Lillard drama and all the speculation out there, and are the Nets going to be involved for Damian Lillard, or are they going to be involved in trying to get Tyler Hero so Lillard can go to the Heat? A lot to go over and discuss, so we have to just dive right in, and we really have to go, because this episode could be over 30 minutes if I dilly-dally and I don't stick on point. So I'm going to just start right up and go right into the NBA draft, which was about 2 weeks ago. So going into the draft, I touched upon some players that I wanted the Nets to try to draft. And I'm pretty excited because for the second time in the history of NetsBoy got one right. With the 21st overall pick, the Nets, sure enough, drafted Noah Clowney. And I threw his name out there because I said, he's someone the Nets are tied to. Some people had him going earlier in the draft, so I thought maybe the Nets might trade up, which they ended up not doing. But they didn't need to because Clowney was available with the 21st overall pick. And I touched upon it in that last episode. I really like Clowney. I think he is going to be a future, rotational center and possibly starter caliber center in this league. I know they kind of listing him as more of a power forward than a center because of his ability to shoot the three-point shot, but I think in the modern NBA today, I see Noah Clowney as another center. And I kind of compared him a little bit to Nick Claxton. He has similar attributes that Claxton had coming out of college when he got drafted, except he's a little bit more polished than what Claxton is, which is why he was a first-round draft pick compared to Claxton, who was the second-round draft pick. But similar type of body structure, athleticism, kind of skinny, that ability to put the ball on the floor, and the ability to stretch out and shoot the three-point shot. Even though he didn't shoot it particularly well in college, he's still capable. And there was a lot of speculation that he could actually play next to Claxton. And you know what? I do see it, because similar to Claxton's ability to switch and guard pretty much 1 through 5, kind of the same thing with Clowney. And so, I like it. And I like the fact that he's someone who can come in off the bench, especially to start off his NBA career, and maybe spell Claxton a couple minutes. He's capable of that. I don't know how much he's really going to be involved in the rotation to start the season. I guess a lot of that's going to be determined on some of the other moves the Nets make. But the reality is, at worst, I see him as a rotational big in this league. Whether he's a 4 or 5, that will be determined. Like I said, I think he's more of a 5 right now, but I will be surprised if he's anything worse than just a rotational big. And you can't get upset with that. And that's what the Nets needed. They needed a little bit more size, someone else to play behind Nick Claxton, and I love it. So I was pumped that I got one of these right. But then right after that, with the 22nd overall pick, they drafted Dariq Whitehead. Now, I think it was funny because on my notes, I would have been 2 for 2. On my notes last episode, I had Dariq Whitehead as one of the players to look at for the Nets. But I didn't really go into that because I didn't really know. I just didn't really want to talk about it because I had so many things to talk about in that episode. So I'm like, he's not as... I didn't hear as much about the Nets being tied to him as I did some of the other players that I talked about in the draft. But Dariq Whitehead was somebody that I personally thought made a lot of sense going to the Nets. He's a 6'6", wing player who was pretty much dealt with injuries in college. He only played in, I think, 10 or 12 games before having the foot surgery. So, you didn't really, or the other way around, he had foot surgery, then he came back and only played in 10 or 12 games and was kind of limited in his ability because he was coming off a foot surgery. Similar type of surgery that Karis LeVert had when he came out of college, and a lot of people are kind of putting the parallel together and seeing the similarities, especially since I think they had the same doctor who also happened to work for the Nets, so the Nets felt comfortable getting Whitehead. I really like this pick because Dariq Whitehead was, before the surgery and coming out of high school, he was considered to be one of a top 25 player in college basketball, and he was projected to be a lottery talent for most of his career until he had the foot injury, and then he came back and didn't show the same type of athleticism and explosiveness that he had prior to the injury. But there's no doubt that there is an NBA player just right there with Dariq Whitehead. First and foremost, he's got the size. I mean, a 6'6" wing player, you look at him, he is NBA ready, and he's 18 years old. He's one of the youngest players in the NBA. I think he is the youngest player ever drafted by the Nets. He's going to just turn 19 at the start of the year, but he's got a pretty big build already. So that's a really positive, thing right off the bat. He's got great NBA range already, shot over 40% from three. I think that at worst, he is going to be a 3-and-D type of player. And I think he could be better than that. Like, at worst, he's another type of Royce O'Neal type player. Like, that's what I see. And I think he's going to be better than that because he has some more athleticism to his game. We didn't see a lot of it in college when he was at Duke because of the injury, but I really do see the potential. I've seen highlights. I've seen clips. I've seen some stuff from when he was in high school, which is harder to find, and I see what the appeal of this guy is. And to me, it's a great pickup by the Nets. 22nd overall pick to get a guy who originally was considered to be a lottery talent, but because of an injury fell. You can't get upset by that. And so I think Whitehead could make an impact on this Nets rotation. Obviously, we know there's not a lot of opportunity to crack the rotation when it comes to the wing players, since the Nets have a lot of wings right now. But I think he's a great player to have on the team to develop and could possibly become, I wouldn't say a star player, but I do think his ceiling is like an all-star caliber player. And you got to go for those type of players if you're the Nets. Will he become an all-star caliber player? I don't know. But like I said, I see at worst Royce O'Neal. That's what I see. So I see somebody who like with Noah Clowney, I see somebody who at worst is a rotational big, and I see Dariq Whitehead at worst a rotational wing player. And you can't go wrong with those type of players. But both have very good upside, and both, I think, could really make a big impact for this Nets team down the road. So I love both those picks. And then finally, with the 51st overall pick, the Nets went with experience, going out and getting Jalen Wilson out of Kansas. And Jalen Wilson, I mean, he's just a jack of all trades type of player. There's nothing he can't do. Another 6'6" wing player. Versatile, can probably play the power forward if you need him to in a small ball situation. Could probably play the 2 if you need him to. So he's kind of like a 2-3-4 type of player. There's nothing that he does great, but there's nothing that he does poorly, and that's kind of what you want when you start drafting players in the late second round. You want kind of polished players. He played 4 years in college. He won a national championship with Kansas. So he's just somebody you want on your team. Will he crack the rotation? I don't know. I see him being his ceiling kind of being a rotational player, a guy who could be a guy who comes off the bench as maybe like your 7th or 8th man off your bench who's going to give you quality minutes and make winning plays. If he can develop a more consistent three-point shot, I think he'd have a good NBA career. I think he will at some point, maybe not necessarily this year. I think he will have a chance to crack the rotation with this Nets team. I think that he has the ability to make a name for himself in the league, but you never know because there is a reason he's the 51st overall pick, and that's because, like I said, there's not one thing he does great. So unless he develops something, he may not make it. But another great pickup, in my opinion, by the Nets. So those three young players, especially Clowney and Whitehead, I absolutely love. I think the Wilson is a smart one. And I was surprised the Nets didn't trade one of those picks, but I think they didn't like the offers they were getting, so they stayed packed. And I feel good about those young players. There's a lot of upside for really all three of them, but especially Whitehead and Clowney. So good job, Sean Marks. I'm 100% on board with those moves, and we'll see what happens. Summer League is starting up in a couple of days. Whitehead will not be participating in the Summer League, though, because he's still getting back from the foot injury. So I guess I was wrong. I guess he did play and then got hurt. I was trying to figure out because I heard a lot of different things, but they're taking it easy with him, and because he did have the foot surgery. So, yeah, but Clowney and Wilson will play in the G League and in the Summer League, and we can get a look at that coming up. So that is what they do with the draft. So 10 minutes on that. Let's move on. After that, free agency started up. But before the Nets made a single move, they had to try to figure out what they were doing with their cap space. As we all know, with the new collective bargaining agreement starting up, cap space has now become a premium because there's loads of restrictions on teams that exceed the higher level of the cap, and the Nets did not want to be one of those teams. We all knew the Nets were going to try to bring back Cam Johnson. That was their primary focus. But Sean Marks didn't want to do that and then handcuff him on making other moves. So pretty much the Nets decided to get rid of Joe Harris and Patty Mills. Literally for nothing. Almost for nothing. I know the Joe Harris trade was like a bare minimum money situation, and I've heard a lot of different things about the Patty Mills trade. Some people said that there was a second-round draft pick involved. Some people said there was nothing. He's got reshipped from Houston to Oklahoma City. I don't even know exactly. All I know is the Nets gave up Joe Harris and 2 second-round draft picks to the Pistons for nothing because they were just trying to unload him. And I think if that doesn't show you how far this guy fell from grace, that they couldn't even just give him away. They had to give him away and 2 second-round draft picks just to get his money off the books. It's like, wow, Joe, like, no wonder why you were my number one donkey. But I will say this. Before we continue on, we do have to pay our respects to Joe Harris. I touched upon it before. Him and now Dinwiddie being back was all that was really left of the fun, 42-win, fun Kenny Atkinson-led Nets. He was a huge factor for the success of this Nets franchise, the last couple years. It's a shame that he just, obviously, after he had the ankle injury and the ankle surgery, he clearly was just not the same. But you can't deny the fact that the first 2 years or 3 years of Joe Harris, he was one of the best three-point shooters around, and honestly, he was a fan favorite. And, it is kind of disappointing to see how his career has kind of tapered off. I do think Joe Harris is a NBA rotational type of player. I don't think he'll be anything more than just a spot-up 3 shooter now. I think that's pretty much the extent of his career the rest of the way. But good luck, Joe. $19 million is too much money, and especially with wanting to bring back Cam Johnson. So I completely understand the deal, and I thought it makes a lot of sense. So thank you, Joe Harris, for the years that you brought to this Nets organization and helping this Nets team become relevant. So NetsBoy salute to Joe Harris. That being said, I am 100% glad he's gone. And then there's Patty Mills, who, similar situation. $6.7 million contract. Nets trying to get some money off the books. They found a suitor. A team was willing to take him for pretty much nothing. Similar type of situation. Patty Mills had a great year the first year he was on this Nets team. Not as much last year, but he was a little bit out of the rotation. But he was a professional through all of it. I thought he was a good veteran leader, and I'm kind of a little disappointed the Nets traded away Patty Mills because I kind of wanted him to be that veteran voice this season. But I guess Sean Marks felt that getting his money off the books was critical for the moves they wanted to make. So a little upset about that because I really did feel like Patty would have benefited from, or the Nets would have benefited from him on this team, but, you know, Sean Marks wanted to get the money off. So a Nets boy salute to Patty Mills. Thank you for your 2 years of service to this Nets team and for being a good player and a good leader and a veteran presence for this team. And really, honestly, being like the 4th most important player 2 years ago when the Nets are trying to actually win a championship. But that was that. So those are 2 moves that the Nets made. Now, why did the Nets make those moves? Well, because they obviously needed to get some salary cap relief. And the biggest thing they did, obviously, is they brought back Cam Johnson, signing him to a 4-year, $108 million contract. And I'll tell you this right now, I did not see that much money coming. Like, I was thinking 4 years, 88, right? Like $22 million a year. That's what I was thinking. Maybe 4 years, 90 or something like that. I did not see $108 million total. I mean, he's making $27 million a season. I did not see that as the number, but the word was there were several teams interested in Cam Johnson, and we knew the Nets were not going to let him walk. Sean Marks wanted to get the deal done before he even entered free agency, before he even had a chance to enter as a restricted free agent. That got the deal done. And, you know, I understand that. I'm sure Sean Marks offered him what he heard other teams were going to, but damn, like I said, I'm glad he's back. But at $28 million a year, I know Cam Johnson is good, but I don't know if he's quite worth that. But maybe I'll be wrong. I mean, he is, you know, probably the 3rd or 4th best player on this Nets team, so I understand it. But at the same time, did not see that coming. But now I understand why Joe Harris and Patty Mills had to get traded, because you weren't going to be able to sign Cam Johnson to that contract with those 2 guys still on the team. So they go out there and they sign Cam Johnson. So he's back, as we all hoped he would be back. But then, out of nowhere, really, Sean Marks makes 2 minimum contract signings of 2 really, really good players. Dennis Smith Jr. and Lonnie Walker IV. Both players I didn't even know was on the Nets' radar. Dennis Smith Jr. had a rejuvenation of a year last year with Charlotte, kind of establishing himself as a really solid rotational guard. And he's kind of that point guard, shooting guard, hybrid type player. But I think he's going to be competing as the backup point guard behind Spencer Dinwiddie for the Nets, along with Edmund Somners, if he's still on the roster at this point. You know, because he is right now, but who knows what other moves the Nets can make. You know, he averaged over 8 points a game last season. Just a really athletic guard, decent facilitator, decent playmaker. And that's one of the things I said the Nets needed. I said going into this offseason, this Nets needed to address on having more playmakers and having more size. Well, Noah Clowney helps with the size, and Dennis Smith Jr. Helps with the playmaking. And he's someone who I think could come in off the bench, play behind Dinwiddie and even next to Dinwiddie, and play, 20 to 25 minutes a game, almost kind of like a sixth man type of role, and really make an impact for this Nets team. And look, it's kind of crazy because he's been in the league for 6 years now, but he's 25 years old. There's still a lot of upside to him. And he kind of seemed like he figured it out last year with the Hornets. So didn't see it coming, but glad he was signed. I think he's going to really help this Nets team out a lot. And then, even more of a shock was the signing of Lonnie Walker IV. I mean, I didn't even know, once again, that he was on the Nets' radar. Lonnie Walker IV played really solid minutes for the Lakers last season. He's a wing player, a shooting guard, mostly is where he's at. But similar type of mentality. He's athletic. He can do a number of things. He's a decent slasher, can shoot the three-point shot. He's just a really good player. And once again, kind of young. He's in his mid-20s. So there's a lot of upside to his skill set as well. So when it's all said and done, out of nowhere, these two young, athletic players, all who can be playmakers as well, helps solidify the Nets guard position, and I really like it. I mean, you lost two guards, you lost two wings in Joe Harris and Patty Mills. You bring in two more guards in Dennis Smith Jr. and Lonnie Walker IV, and I think they're two really good signings. Not only that, they managed to bring those guys in on minimum contracts for $2.5 million. So the Nets still have their two mid-level exceptions. Their higher taxpayer mid-level exception, I think, which is estimated about $12 million, and their semi-mid-level exception, which is around $6 million. So the Nets still have two exceptions to go out there and bring in some other players. Who would that be? I'm not sure, because as of right now, the Nets have, I believe, 13 or 14 players under contract, so they only have room for really one more. But obviously, Sean Marks might do more type of trade soon. We know Dorian Finney-Smith's name has been thrown out there. We've heard Royce O'Neal's name has been thrown out there. Obviously, there's the big rumor going out there involving Damian Lillard, and will the Nets be involved in that? Whether it's getting Lillard, which is what I want to have happen, or being involved in bringing in Tyler Hero. I mean, we've heard a lot of those things. So there's still more moves to be made. But as of this point, as of July 5th, right now, this is where we stand with this Nets team, and I'm pretty pleased. I'm pretty pleased. But I do think there's more that needs to be done. I would like to see the Nets go out there and bring in at least one more big. There's been some speculation of Christian Wood maybe signing for the Nets. He's still out there. He's somebody that a lot of teams really like. He's 6'10", kind of a versatile power forward who can also play the center spot. His name's been out there. Mo Bamba, his name is out there. Did I hear he signed? I don't know. Some things might have happened from the time I last checked and the time I'm actually filming this episode. So don't get on me if some of these players actually sign when you're seeing this episode, because, I'm filming this literally like very, very, very early, like 12:57 a.m. on July 5th. That's literally what the clock says. This is when I film these episodes, people, if you didn't know. I do them at like 1 o'clock in the morning all the time, because that's the only time I have to do them. But anyway, so if something has happened, don't get on me. But he's someone I like the Nets to try to go after. I want him to bring in one more big. I think they're actually kind of set right now with their guard situation. I think the combination of Edmund Sumners, Dennis Smith Jr., and Spencer Dinwiddie, along with Lonnie Walker and Mikal Bridges and Dariq Whitehead, and Cam Thomas, they're good with the guards and the wings. And Dorian Finney-Smith, Royce O'Neal, they're there with the wings. With Cam Johnson, they're there with the wings. They still need more size. I still want to see more size. Right now it's just Claxton, Clowney, and Sharp, which I like, but let's bring in another big. So that's something they should do. So we'll see what happens. Going back to the Damian Lillard thing, I'll just say this. I don't understand why all of a sudden the Nets are out on Damian Lillard. From the beginning they said, oh, it was Heat Nets, Heat Nets, Heat Nets. Then Damian Lillard actually demands the trade, and all of a sudden it's just Heat. And, I read a couple things of why that is, and I understand it. And mostly it's just that the Nets just don't see Damian Lillard coming in and fitting their timeline. Sean Marks doesn't want to go all in on a superstar again. And I don't blame him after what happened with Kyrie Irving and KD. And let's be honest here. Damian Lillard is 33 years old. You bring him in, you better be winning a championship in 2 to 3 years. And with the other players that the Nets have, Claxton, who's 24, Bridges, who's 27, Cam Johnson, who's 27, Dinwiddie is the oldest guy at 30 right now. This is not a win-now team. Even with Damian Lillard, they would be, I would say, a top 5 team in the East, especially if they don't give up more than just draft picks to get them in. But they're not a championship team. And I think Sean Marks sees that. So that is why I think the Nets kind of got out of this Damian Lillard idea, because they realized if you brought him in, who knows what you would need to do to get what players you need to give up for him. I touched upon it before. I would give up anyone who's not Claxton or Bridges, but maybe that wouldn't be good enough, because if you deplete this young team, which all of a sudden the Nets have some really good young assets with all the draft picks and Whitehead and Clowney, and they've got some good young talent on this team. So I get it now. That being said, I still think they should kick the tires on it, and I'm sure Sean Marks has. if they want draft picks, I'd be like, I'll give you Ben Simmons' useless contract and 4 first-round draft picks and Cam Thomas. I mean, if that's what it would take, I would do it. But I think it might take more than that. And for some weird reason, Damian Lillard all of a sudden just has his eyes set on the Heat. After he touched upon being traded to a few other teams in a podcast, he says he just wants to go to the Heat. And the Heat don't have what the Trailblazers are looking for. So now we're hearing the speculation that maybe the Nets will get involved, but not to get Damian Lillard, but to get Tyler Hero, because he's the main focus point of what the Heat want to give up. But the Trailblazers don't want Hero. But the Nets are like, well, I mean, we'll take a 20-point scorer, 25-year-old, 24-year-old, shooting guard, point guard type of 20-point scoring playmaker. We'll take him. And you know what? I wouldn't be against it, especially with what I've heard. I've been hearing that the Nets are saying, hey, if you take Ben Simmons off our hands, we'll give you like 2 of our first-round draft picks in the deal. And Miami, you give us Tyler Hero. I would trade Ben Simmons and 2 first-round draft picks for Tyler Hero. I think Tyler Hero's a great fit. He's what the Nets need, a scorer. He's a guy who's going to get you buckets, but in more of a flow of the offense way, unlike stupid Cam Thomas. Like, think Cam Thomas, but with the ability to understand when to shoot and pass the ball. That's Tyler Hero. So I would take Tyler Hero. So I actually am for this now. The more I read into it, and it fits the timeline. I mean, I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm just saying, if that's what the trade is, and it just gets Ben Simmons away and 2 first-round draft picks, and you got Tyler Hero, and now you have a young team of Tyler Hero, Mikal Bridges, Nick Claxton, Cam Johnson, Tariq Whitehead, Noah Clowney, Day'Ron Sharp, and even Cam Thomas, who I've been poo-pooing, but still, with Dennis Smith Jr., who's 25, Lonnie Walker the fourth, who's young. Like, all of a sudden, look at this young nucleus that this Nets team has, and Jock Vaughn can develop. And I'm not saying that it's going to work out and the Nets are going to be this great team in 3 to 5 years, but I could see a chance where some of these players really become really key players for this Nets team, and maybe they become, a consistent young playoff team that's always competing and playing hard, and maybe one of these players become star players, and, all of a sudden you see Claxton develop a 3-point shot, which I know he has. The Nets just need to let him shoot. And Claxton all of a sudden is an 18-10 guy, and Mikal Bridges is averaging 25 a game, and Tyler Hero is averaging 22 a game, and Cam Johnson becomes a great 2-way player, and I don't think Dinwiddie would be on the team at this point, but maybe Dinwiddie's passing the ball and just becoming leading the league in assists. It all could happen. It's all a little bit of a fantasy, but the best thing about this new Nets team and these young players is it gives you an opportunity to be optimistic and to believe. And that's all we ever want, really. It's just the hope that it will get better. And so if that's what it would take just to get Tyler Hero, Ben Simmons, and 2 first-round draft picks, I say do it, Nets. Even if Damian goes to Miami, and you know that, I'm telling you right now, Damian Lillard goes to Miami with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, it's a wrap. All right? Miami's winning the NBA title next year. But beside the point, I do it. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. So there you have it. Let's wrap up this episode. We are going on nearing 30 minutes now. I was afraid of this. But like I said, there was a lot we had to talk about, a lot we had to discuss. Let me know what you guys think about everything, from the NBA draft to Joe Harris and Patty Mills being gone, to Dennis Smith Jr. and Lonnie Walker being signed, to the speculation of the Nets getting Tyler Hero or Damian Lillard, all those things. And until the next Nets boy, which will probably be, I don't even know. Let's be honest. I'm talking out my ass every time now when I'm saying, keep your eyes open to the next Nets boy episode. It'll be blah, 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 blah. Because I don't even know. But the reality is there's still more things happening this offseason. So I'm sure at some point the Nets are going to be doing something else. So let's just say in a couple weeks or so, keep your eyes open to the next Nets boy. And until then, this is Nets boy getting all caught up with everything and signing off.